Hello and welcome back to another episode of Boys Gone Wild. Today we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favourites in history. It's Mahatma Gandhi, because Gandhi was the epitome of a boy gone wild. There's many different metrics for measuring boys gone wild, as you've seen from the whole series. But what's incredible about someone like Gandhi is that he's changed the course of history forever. And he's an absolute nutcase. So I'm very excited to get into my boy Mahatma Gandhi, or as his friends called him, Handstandy Gandhi, because he loved doing handstands. That's a little known bit of trivia about Gandhi. Big Handstandy Gandhi. Yesterday I did the Jordan Peterson episode, and he's been getting a lot of views, but I feel I recorded like 40 minutes and cut it down to 20 minutes, and it looks a lot like I'm a Jordan Peterson fan. I'm not a Jordan Peterson fan. I've had loads of people message me going like, oh my god, I completely agree with what you're saying. I'm like, oh, that's great. We should measure IQ by the width of someone's skull. And also, women do belong in the kitchen. Wait, what? I didn't say that. So I'm not a Jordan Peterson. I just think we misunderstand him on the left, was all I was saying. So we all know who Gandhi is. He's basically the civil rights leader in India, who is considered the father of the nation and led the mass movement that basically ended colonial British rule in India. Widely regarded as one of the greatest human beings of all time. He's kind of up there in that sort of Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela sort of mode. But when you do more research about Gandhi, what's so delicious about him is that for all his greatness, every single great thing he's done, there's also something that's utterly hysterically awful. He's an absolute creep, Randy Gandhi, and has a lot of skeletons in his closet, which I can't wait to go into, because it's like, my general view on Gandhi is that I used to think Gandhi was a genius, a kind of a political mastermind, and a great moral leader. It's partly true, but I think more likely, and this is what is one of my favourite things about history, is that he was just a fucking fruitcake who was in the right place at the right time, so that his mental ideas happened to do a whole lot of good. A quick backstory on Gandhi. He was born to like a fairly middle-class family in India, went to London, became a lawyer, then he was in South Africa for 20 years, did law practice there, unbelievably racist against black people, couldn't stand black people, but So I'm not going to go into the racism. That's not even, I could do a whole other episode on Gandhi's racism, but this is more about Randy Gandhi, this one. But yeah, when he was in South Africa, he suffered racial abuse himself, and that sort of drove him to lead a lot of popular movements against the British. But one of the key moments in his early life happened with the death of his father. Basically, when his father was on his deathbed, this is before Gandhi, the Gandhi we know, he was desperate to be with his father for his final moments, but then my boy Randy Gandhi got a little bit too randy and went to bang his wife. His wife, who he met due to arranged marriage when they were 13, 14 years old. And so while he was banging his wife, his father died. And he felt so guilty about that basically shaped his sexual habits after that. So he swore to complete chastity for the rest of his life, and said, I'm never going to bang you again, to his wife. Which is, it seems a pretty rough deal for his wife, but you might be able to understand it if he was fully chaste. But I think Gandhi was just a bit of a soft boy, kind of gaslighting. He was a fuck boy, basically, because he told his wife, never banging you again. But then to test his chastity, what he would do, to prove how chaste he was, he would get like 8-year-old, 7-year-old girls to sleep in bed naked with him, as a sort of temptation to test his chasteness. And then the fact that he didn't sleep with them, he thought would prove how strong his will is. Sorry, Gandhi, mate, you sound a little bit like a pedo. And I know Gandhi would be like, yeah, but I didn't even fuck him. But I'm like, yes, Gandhi, but The whole point is that you're trying to resist temptation. And to be honest, I think if I had an 8-year-old girl in my bed and I didn't sleep with her, I wouldn't be like, where's my medal? You know? I wouldn't be going down to the boys like, guess what, lads? Had a proper fit 8-year-old in my bed last night. Didn't even fuck her. Look at Zen Master Gandhi over here. It's like, Gandhi, mate, yeah, you shouldn't want to fuck her. That's the wrong... Like, if he was getting, like, a supermodel in bed with him, or maybe his wife, who he clearly got very sick of very soon, that would sort of make sense. Like, yeah, why didn't Gandhi ever use his wife as temptation? Like, the poor woman is being ousted out of her bed by an 8-year-old, just so Gandhi could go downstairs in the morning like, oh, that's another night. Didn't even bang her. She was my granddaughter as well. So even more tempting. But no, not this guy. Above it. I'm above it. Don't sleep with 8-year-olds. You're a pedo, mate. Because, yeah, it's pretty creepy to do. And that's the kind of stuff that would get you cancelled. But, you know, because it's sort of a lot of stuff what like Michael Jackson was doing. But it really goes to show you can achieve, there are things you can do that make you exempt from being cancelled. Like Gandhi probably was a bit of a pedo, but also founded India, so he gets a pass. You know, Michael Jackson, sadly, very culturally influential, but if you're a pedo, you can't get a pass unless there's one level above Michael Jackson, which is Gandhi. And Gandhi, for example, if Shakespeare turned out he was a pedo, he would get a pass. So there's only a very select... It's a testament to Gandhi's achievements that he's allowed to go about noncing, and we don't care. But that's not even the main point about why. That's only sort of the start of Gandhi's weird perversity. So he'd have all of these young women around him as a sort of harem. Unbelievably sexist. He'd have 2 women walking by him constantly to help him, because when he was old, he was kind of struggling. He used to call them his walking sticks. Very, very classy Gandhi. And then because he was fasting so much and had a diet that consisted of basically just nuts and goat's milk, he was severely constipated, like unbelievably constipated. And so like he'd often spend like 3 hours at a time on the toilet just trying to curl one out, you know. But to keep him company, he'd bring some of the young women along and just make them watch him take a shit. So like, yes, Gandhi, you did father India, but you are a fucking fruitcake. Imagine that. And he was like, he became obsessed with bowel movements. So it'd be like one of the things, he'd always be asking, he'd be that kind of weird uncle who's always asking about your bowel movements. So did you have a good bowel movement today? Yeah, because I did have a good bowel movement because I eat other things than fucking nuts. And what I liked about Gandhi is how he clearly had quite a weirdly addictive personality. So he'd turn these sort of things that on the surface might look like healthy things to do or morally strong things to do. Like, he'd give himself an enema. He'd start giving himself an enema because he was so constipated. It was the only way that he'd take a shit. But then he clearly liked enema so much, it's reported that he'd give himself enemas like up to 3 times a day, even when he didn't need a shit. So this is the problem. When you're not... Fair play, you're not having sex with anyone, but if you not having sex with anyone results in you constantly shoving shit up your ass, then I feel sort of against the point. I think just because you technically aren't having sex doesn't mean that the fact that you sleep with 8-year-olds naked and just constantly shoving things up your asshole doesn't mean that you're chaste, you know? He would also, he was so obsessed with giving himself an enema, he'd also give some of the young women in his life an enema. So a big part of his day would be shoving things up his own arse, but also put things up the women's arse to try and help them with their bowel movements, even if their bowel movements were fine. So proper weirdo Randy Gandhi. And he basically had this obsession with bodily fluids and sexual discipline. So he never masturbated, but he thought that the way to freeing your soul was not wanking. Like, he was obsessed with keeping semen inside of you. He says it should never leave your body. And this wasn't like a private thing he wrote down in notes. He would do mass speeches saying that the only way for India to gain independence from Britain was to stop coming all the time. Like, loads of his speeches were about cum. He'd be like, he thought one of the key routes towards independence from Britain was to keep the semen inside your body. And to gain independence from Britain, we must keep our cum. Okay? What about the non-violence and turning the other cheek and all that? Yeah, that too. But most importantly, those cheeky Brits, they're after our cum. And they're not going to get it. Oh, you want my cum? No, sir, you're not getting it. All right? If anyone wants me, I'm going to be lying down in that creche. Not fucking any of them, because I'm not a pedo. So this builds into my theory that he was just the right madman in the right time to cause huge change. Because he's out there shouting about cum, but also he's leading a movement that's very successful and changes the whole way we look at violence. Another thing I love about Gandhi is that clearly he had an obsession with there was a lot of sadomasochism in the thing. So like the dieting, the sleeping in the same bed but not having sex with 8-year-olds. But he also is very famed for his fasting. That's one of the that's used as one of the big pros of his sort of non-violent revolution. He would fast, and they were quite successful. Like he went 21 days without food in a fast against the British Empire, and that sort of discipline, that self-discipline, inspired a lot of the revolution. But then you look a bit further, and I hear in reports from his family and stuff like that, he was just obsessed with fasting. So he'd be fasting anyway, you know, because what's appealing about fasting is that someone is sacrificing so much of themselves to achieve a political goal. Gandhi was just fasting all the time. If you look at his fast, he was fasting over everything. Every possible moment he got to fast, he would. Like, even after that massive fast, and when they gained independence from Britain, he'd still just keep going on fast. And, like, his family would be fed up with it because he was, like, on his deathbed nearly dying. But no, he was just obsessed with fasting. And I think it really goes to show that he's not a genius. It's just a stopped clock is right twice a day. He would be fasting and doing all this shit no matter when he was born. He just happened to be in a time where the fact he was fasting saved India from colonialism. And also, the non-violence, that's another thing that's always brought up. He did believe in non-violence, and he did lead a non-violent revolution. And that's always seen as what's so incredible about him. But he believed in non-violence to the point where he wrote to Churchill on the eve of the Battle of Britain, saying, I think the best way to deal with the Nazis is to do a non-violent revolution, which is one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard. Like, imagine Britain just being like, right, we're going to protest the Nazis by fasting and stuff. We'll just get absolutely annihilated. So Churchill politely declined the tactical advice. But it does go to show that he was just saying non-violence in every scenario. Like, it was just lucky that it worked in India. But he would just be like, non-violence in every single scenario. Doesn't matter where it is, just always turn the other cheek. And also something I like about Gandhi is that it's so clear that he hated his wife. He just couldn't stand his wife. And because of arranged marriages and the chasteness, he was sort of stuck with her for his whole life. There's one moment that's pretty wild thing to do. His wife got very ill, and then his whole family, all his children were begging to give her penicillin. She needed penicillin to survive, but then he said it was like Western medicine and it wasn't traditional, and that just by fasting and spirituality alone, the gods would save her. She died, and then he became ill. And he was like, right, yeah, give me the drugs. Definitely, give me the drugs. I'm not dying like that, like my old girl. So it was just clear that he was just sick of all the yapping, you know? And that seems to be a thorough point, you know? It doesn't matter how holy you are. Sometimes it's just having the old girl constantly yapping. So yeah, that's been Gandhi, who is... I have a soft spot for him as a boy gone wild. Because in the way we can sum every boy gone wild up and who's the most wild boy, he's a pretty eccentric dude, but he also is one of the most famous people who's ever existed. So that just adds another wild element to him. I just love that sometimes someone who's just absolutely mental can change the world and come off as an enlightened spiritual leader, when actually he's basically just a sadistic pedo in a blanket. But I still think they should build statues of him. I still think he's a hero because of what he achieved. Like, it doesn't matter. I think the ends justify the means in many senses. Right, that's been another episode of Boys Gone Wild. I've been Horatio Gould. This has been Mahatma Gandhi, Randy Gandhi, Handstandy Gandhi, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. So.